TF2 has a plethora of guns. You of course have the stock weapons that you get by default, but there are tons of weapons that you can unlock, either by random drops, achievements, trading, buying, and things of that nature. A lot of these weapons provide their own benefits, like the direct hit, which incentivizes you to go for direct hits more often, which rewards you with higher damage. Or the gunslinger, which provides more health but trades off your sentry for a mini sentry, which allows you to be more aggressive as an engineer. However, some of these weapons are just simply bad. So what I thought would be fun was to get the worst weapons for each class and rank them from worst to best. Anyways, if you like this video, be sure to, like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, thank you for watching. Also, I forgot to mention this, but for the rules I set up as to which weapons I'm picking, I'm only doing primaries or secondaries and fucking weapons I can shoot. I'm not going to pick the bonk because, that's just a drink, right? I'm not going to pick the gas passer because that's not really, you don't deal damage with that shit. So it's got to be a gun that deals damage that's in the primary or secondary. It cannot be a melee weapon. Anyways, yeah, I probably should have cared. Starting off with the best of the worst is the Huo-Long Heater. As for the stats, they seem a little odd. So first things first, when revving this gun up, it creates a ring of flames around the player. Anyone getting hit by this ring, of course, getting set on fire. Next attribute works with the flames as you do 25% more damage against burning players. Now as for the downsides, you have a 10% damage penalty and the ring of flames costs 4 ammo per second. Now for how this thing plays, the damage penalty doesn't really feel all that effective against it. Most times anyways, I'll still be getting the kill. However, because you are constantly rapidly firing this weapon while in combat, plus the 4 ammo being taken away every second during rev up, you will lose ammo on this weapon fast. When using this, I found myself running back to ammo packs and dispensers a lot more than if I had just been using stock. So the only reason I would deem this weapon as Heavy's worst is that it's a minigun where you only get to use it less if you were using any other minigun. However, compared to the other weapons on this list, it is still a lot more usable than the others. Next weapon on the list is the Babyface's Blaster. Now the stats on this thing are fucking wacky. For the sake of keeping it simple, I'll describe it like this. This weapon by default increases your movement speed down to 120%, which is still faster than every class at their base speed, but as a scout it definitely slows you down a bit. On each hit, depending on how much damage you do, this speed increases to a max speed of 173%. This is the second fastest movement speed you can reach, only being beaten out by a demo man charging. Now as for the downsides, you now only have 4 shots in your clip, and your speed boost is lost whenever you double jump or when you're hit. Now personally, I'd say this weapon is kind of a big step down from a Huo-Long Heater. This weapon all around messes up Scout's whole playstyle. You're gonna run in quick and pick people off with your high damage, pick your fights, flank the enemies, etc. The speed debuff this weapon gives you stops you from doing any of that, at least not as effectively. When you eventually do come into combat with an enemy, you have less chances to hit your target with the shorter clip, and even when you do hit a shot and gain the speed boost, it can be lost so easily. A fucking dust particle could graze your skin, and you'll lose all of it, and are back to being slower than a base scout. I often found myself lost after gaining the speed boost because I can't double jump without losing it, and I was afraid to enter any combat because if I did, they could do it as little as sneeze on me to make me lose all of my speed. Of course, this is still a scattergun, so the damage is still amazing, but the speed stats definitely throws things off with the constant ups and downs of your speed. The next weapon on this list is the Scotch Resistance. In casual TF2, this weapon is one of Demo Man's weakest choices. However, in Man vs. Machine, you can carry entire tours with this thing. Of course, we aren't talking about Man vs. Machine, so I'll stop getting sidetracked. Looking at the stats of this thing, it doesn't actually seem all that bad. You get a 25% faster firing speed, more reserve ammo, you can place down more stickies, you can choose which bombs you want to detonate, and it's able to destroy enemy sticky bombs. However, there is one stat on this thing that really throws things off. The sticky bombs take approximately 1.5 seconds longer to arm before they can detonate. This doesn't seem like much, but completely throws off the way Demo Man is played in casual TF2. Now you can call me a dirty sticky spammer all you want, but that's like what 90% of using the sticky bomb launcher is for Demo Man. You want to be able to shoot the sticky bombs and detonate them in time where the enemy is still standing next to them. Those extra 1.5 seconds gives enemies the chance to run away or close the distance between them and you. Of course, you can set traps with this thing, which is what this weapon excels at, but being able to shoot out stickies and detonate them quickly after is what saves Demo Man in most situations, and is where I'd say a lot of his kills come from. The next weapon on this list is the ManMelter. The stats on this thing don't actually seem all that bad either. There is a 50% buff on projectile speed. It does not require ammo. It can reload when you're not holding it. you can extinguish teammates who are on fire, and by extinguishing them, you get a guaranteed crit on the gun, plus you restore 20 health. The one downside on this thing being that there is no random critical hits. The only reason I say this is Pyro's worst gun is that as for the different flare guns he has, this one is simply outclassed, despite this gun sharing the same damage stats to that of the flare gun. The idea that you have to extinguish teammates to gain crits is different to the traditional flare gun. It leaves you running around to extinguish your teammates so you can gain crits, while on the flare gun it automatically crits against burning players. I can see this being synergized with the Phlogistinator, as you are unable to air blast with that gun, but as for most situations, you'd be better off just using a flamethrower to extinguish teammates. This definitely isn't the worst weapon on this list, but the use of this weapon is more complicated than just using that of the flare gun. Next weapon is where I'd say we start getting to the worst of the worst, with our next weapon being the Cleaner's Carbine. This weapon is a worse side grade to an already bad weapon, being the SMG. Looking at the stats gives a pretty clear explanation as to why it's bad. Starting with the buffs on this gun, dealing damage builds up a Cruelty meter, which when filled can be activated to gain mini crits for 8 seconds. The downsides are that you have a smaller clip size, you fire slower, and no random crits. This thing fires slower and has less bullets than the SMG, with the SMG already being a pretty poor weapon with the low damage and the fact it's a rapid fire weapon, in which most rapid fire guns don't work in TF2, not counting the heaviest guns of course. The one upside of this thing is the mini crits that you get after filling up the Cruelty meter. People like to pair these mini crits with the Bushwhacker, which is one of Sniper's melee weapons that replaces mini crits with full crits, causing you to deal some devastating damage. The one thing about this is that there's a better and quicker option to getting full crits with the Bushwhacker, and that's by using the Girardi. My fucking phone just vibrated. The one thing about this is that there's a better and quicker option to getting full crits with the Bushwhacker, and that's by using the Girardi, which not only is quickly deployable and can be spread across many enemies, but your teammates get mini crits on the enemies too after you splash them with your fucking piss. So yeah, not only is this gun selfish as you keep the mini crits all to yourself, but it also takes longer to build up said mini crits. Next gun is the Enforcer for the Spy. The stats on this thing are that you deal 20% more damage while you are disguised, and that your attacks pierce damage resistances and bonuses, with the downsides being 20% slower firing speed and no random crits. The problem with this gun is how rarely the upsides ever come into play. The damage bonus you get from being disguised makes your max damage with the revolver go from 60 to 72. That's right, a whole whopping 12 damage! You'd be better off just going for a backstab while disguised anyways. The whole piercing damage resistance thing is also very rare in use. I can maybe see it useful against enemies while being charged with the Vaccinator, Ringled Sentries, and spies who use the Dead Ringer, but really those are just insanely situational, and you probably wouldn't even end up using your gun for some of those situations anyways. Next weapon on this list is the Overdose. Now, ranking this weapon so low is kinda unfair because it's a weapon for Medic, a character who's more based around healing than he is damaging. Despite this, I'm still gonna be ranking this weapon this low. There are only 2 stats on this thing. You deal 50% less damage and your walk speed increases with your Ubercharge percent, scaling you from 107% speed to 128%. Not enough to match that of a scout, but definitely an increase. Personally, I couldn't notice much of a difference. As for the gun itself, it's absolutely painful to use. The needle guns themselves are already very weird in how it works, being a rapid fire gun like the SMG, but the needles themselves being projectiles. So most of the time you're aiming way ahead of the enemy to actually hit them. Plus the damage debuff making your max damage being 10 for each needle. If you want a clear representation of how it feels to use this gun, just imagine the most mind-numbing, boring shit you've ever done in your life, and then just cut your fucking dick off. As for the second to last weapon, this one may be debatable, but I have to go with the Pomson. The stats on this thing is that it does not require ammo but still needs time to reload. Projectiles cannot be destroyed or deflected. Hitting a medic makes him lose 10% Uber, and hitting a spy makes him lose 20% cloak, with the downside being that you only deal 20% damage to buildings. The projectile on this gun is one of the slowest in the game, so when you're shooting at people with this thing, they most of the time dodge the projectile due to how sluggish it moves. Even when it does hit, it only deals up to 72 damage, while the stock shotgun deals up to 90. Also, the stats against the medic and spy rarely ever come into play, so all this weapon is just a slower shotgun that deals less damage to both players and especially buildings. So yeah, please just use any other shotgun than this piece of shit. Now finally, the last weapon on this list should come as no surprise, as is easily the righteous fucking Bison. Nothing is good about this weapon. Let's look at its stats. The weapon fires an unreflectable, indestructible projectile that pierces an unlimited amount of targets. So basically, if 2 people are standing in a straight line and I shoot the person in front, the projectile will go through them and hit the person behind them. This weapon also deals 20 damage per tick and is one of the slowest moving projectiles in the game. Lastly, this weapon has an infinite amount of reserve ammo. It still needs to reload, but you'll never need to grab an ammo pack. Now, let's go over how these stats affect the usage of this weapon. Now, despite things like the basic rocket moving slower than the projectile from this gun, it still has things like splash damage to compensate. This gun has a slow projectile, and the only way to hit something with it is to hit your target directly, meaning splash damage can't help you. Now, this is horrible. You will rarely hit your shots with this thing. There are so many times I've been like a foot away from my enemy, and I still miss my shot. This thing moves so slow, it gives the enemy so much time to react and move around it. The only time you'll be hitting your shots with this thing is if the enemy is not even looking at you. And even then, you'll probably still miss. Now, even if you do by some miracle manage to hit someone with this thing, you only do 20 damage per tick. Of course, since it goes by ticks, the damage can stack up. So if you hit this thing point blank range, it can go up to 48. But of course, this piece of shit gets buggier. Like sometimes, because of the stupid tick rate, it can randomly scale in damage. I unfortunately don't have the clip, but I was able to hit someone for like 200 fucking damage with a random crit. Of course, it being a crit, it should have done 60 damage, but instead it bugged around and got 200. This thing is so fucking inconsistent that it's impossible to use. You almost never hit your shots with this thing, and even if you do, it's not guaranteed how much damage you'll even be doing. So yeah, this is, in my opinion, the worst weapon in the game. So yeah, that's it for the video. Sorry for taking so long with this. I guess I'll explain my over month-long absence now. Basically, after uploading my last video, it was my last week of summer break before school again, and so I didn't really have any real intentions of making a new video. Instead, just trying to make new ideas. After that week was week 2, which was my first week back at school. I was still, settling in school and stuff, and was thinking of, still thinking of a new video idea. It was only until the beginning of the 3rd week I thought of an idea. And once again, I was, still settling in school. It's my 2nd week, and also it was my birthday that Friday. It was the end of the 3rd week that I got sick and completely lost any motivation on week 4 because I, felt like shit. Then came week 5. I was absolutely dedicated to start working on the video that weekend, that fucking weekend, until I woke up Saturday and with my mom just randomly telling me, like, hey, we gotta pack your bags, we're going on a random vacation that I didn't tell you about. Like, what the fuck? Anyways, now we're at the end of week 6 when I'm writing this script, and I still have no clue to when the video will drop, as I kind of want to make this video editing like a lot more enjoyable to watch compared to my other videos in compensation for, how long it took for me to get around to making this video. That was a lot of yap, but anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, sorry for taking forever, and I'll try not to be as absent this long again, but no guarantees. Anyways, yeah, that's it. See ya.